You can smell it in the air. You have the sunscreen. You have the bug spray. You smell the s'mores. It is camping season, so we'll jump first and foremost into some SEC camp intel. Camp intel is one of the best parts about this job, being able to talk to some of our experts, our insiders at various universities and hear from them, hey, what's going on inside? Well, I mean, you read the ticker and you read the preseason magazine, but what's going on so far about a week into camp? Well, like I said, we're going to whip around 3 SEC schools and give you the intel, give you inside scoop, if you will. Starting at Auburn, Justin Hokanson over there at Auburn Live does the Lord's work. I would recommend following him on Twitter. If you haven't, go check out that website if you haven't. But he hit me with a few bullet points. First and foremost, there is optimism on the offensive line. He said they've looked stronger and faster than they did in the past so far in fall camp. And some of that is a testament to the strength conditioning staff. Harsin said, hey, we made that a point of emphasis for our staff, for the offensive line. We knew they had to transform. We knew they had to take it up a notch in order for us to compete in the SEC. That's going to be crucial for Tank Bigsby as he gets his legs under him again in 2022. The second tidbit he gave me was Zach Calzada has not yet sprinted away with this job. Now, he's still the front runner, don't get it twisted, but so far into camp, he's yet to take hold of that job and squeeze the life out of it. Now, there's 2 opinions I have on this. The first is, well, you'd like him to do that, right? You'd like Zach Calzada to step in there and be the sheriff day one. Fair enough. The other piece of this is, hey, folks, it's like the first week of fall camp. I mean, they haven't even scrimmaged yet. They haven't even had a real game-like scenario yet. Let's all just pump the brakes. If you haven't already, if you didn't even worry about that tidbit, that's fine. But if you're worried at all about Zach Calzada being the guy at Auburn, I wouldn't. It's just way too early to do any of that. Still the first week of fall camp. We're going to learn a lot about that quarterback race when it comes to the scrimmage on Saturday. I've said this about the race. I'll say it about other races. Whoever wins that quarterback job, good. Because your head coach is betting his meal ticket on that quarterback. Especially Bryan Harsin, which we'll talk about, I'm assuming, at a later date. It's very obvious. Like, hey, you got to win a lot of games. What number of games you need to win, I don't know. I don't think Bryan Harsin even knows. But they have to win, and win convincingly for him to keep his job. The quarterback position is a big part of that. The third piece of this, or the third tidbit that I got from Justin Hokanson talking about Auburn, they're really excited about freshman wide receiver Camden Brown. To use Justin's words, he said they haven't had a guy like Camden Brown at Auburn in a minute. And if you watch this show or if you just follow Auburn in general, you know the wide receiver position is a spot they're watching very closely. Because ultimately, the word unproven comes to mind when you're talking about that group. Not that they don't have talent, not that they don't have guys that can produce and do some good things, but there's a lot of guys that just haven't done it consistently yet on the outside at Auburn. And so Camden Brown comes in as a freshman from St. Thomas Aquinas, a really well-respected program in the state of Florida, steps in there, and Auburn had 2 rookie practices. Meaning, okay, if you're a freshman or a rookie, quote-unquote, we're going to let you get your feet wet before, you get in with the veterans, before fall camp really ramps up. So that's great. Have the training wheels. Let these kids get rolling. Folks, Camden Brown had 1 practice, and they said, hey, we're good. We've seen enough. You can go with the veterans. I'm not saying he's winning the Heisman Trophy. I'm not saying he's going to be a 1,000-yard receiver. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is the Auburn staff is very excited about Camden Brown. The vibe is still good in-house at Auburn, I think, is the biggest takeaway. A lot of things happened this past offseason leading up to fall camp. I love what Bryan Harsin said at Media Day, went gangbusters, said, y'all didn't think I would be here. Pretty much flexed on the whole media scene. I absolutely loved it. In-house, they feel good about who they are at Auburn, and I think that's a very good thing. To have that belief in-house is where it all has to start. Moving right along, we go to Baton Rouge. Talk to Billy Embody at Bengal Tiger, which is our LSU site for On3. And LSU is a program that is very interesting to watch because there is so much talent in the state of Louisiana that we expect Brian Kelly's going to get that thing headed to an elite place in the very near future. But what does it look like in 2022? Even more so, what's going on at fall camp? Well, we'll talk about it. We'll start that over here. You and me will start that over. The quarterback competition is very much up for grabs. Okay, so Jaden Daniels, Miles Brennan, Garrett Nussmeier, all getting reps. As of right now, it's just that. They're getting reps. Nobody is taking hold of the job just yet, but they're not doing a down and distance sort of setting either. So Brian Kelly was pretty frank. He said, you're not going to see somebody separate in this competition for at least another week. So right now, the quarterbacks are all just going with a conglomerate of different personnel. There's no ones and twos. There's no starter or there's no third string. Everybody is getting reps, and that's how it should be your first week of fall camp. You see what guys are looking like after they're back from spring, after they've had their 2 weeks of summer, which is really what it is, the Division I level. You get about 2 weeks or so of summer, then you're back to campus. How did they use that time? How have they progressed? How have they done with their summer workouts? Right now, you're learning a lot about those guys in their summer. And so the quarterback competition is going to take shape. Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, said, I'd love to have a guy sooner rather than later to get ready for week one, but we don't have a timeline. This thing's going to take its time. Right now, they're all getting reps. We move forward, okay? So you know how I feel about this. I think you'll probably see all three of these guys play. I think Garrett Nussmeier long-term is your answer. How quickly does he become the answer? Is it in 2022? I don't know, but I think Miles Brennan takes that first snap of this season for you at LSU. The other piece that I thought was really insightful talking about the camp intel that we have at LSU is Kayshon Boutte is practicing. You know Kayshon Boutte, if you followed LSU or national college football at all, is a freak show receiver, has got the number 7 jersey. It was his first time to rock it, was hurt in the spring. And Kayshon Boutte, it was somewhat well documented. He and Brian Kelly, let's just say rift, okay? If we're reading between the lines, Brian Kelly made it sound like, hey, Kayshon Boutte still has some ways to go in terms of buying into what we're doing here. And so far, the report from fall camp, the intel is Brian Kelly and Kayshon Boutte are in a good place. Not they were ever in a bad place, but they're in a good place, and Brian Kelly was very complimentary of Kayshon Boutte. He said he practices really hard. He's so committed. He works so hard. He's still figuring out how to practice the way we want to practice, but he's committed, and we're really pleased with how he's bought in. To have your number 1 receiver, one of the best receivers in the country, bought into what your head coach is doing in the day and age of the portal, that's a really good thing. That's good. That's a good momentum for LSU, good momentum for the offense. Another guy that I'm watching really closely, 5-star running back John Emery, is someone who missed most of last season due to academic standing. And I think this is the year he puts it all together. And that's what they're saying in fall camp is he's looked really great. He's putting it all together. He's showing a lot of good things on the field so far. It's still early. It's still just P and 10, meaning we're not actually going to situational football yet. But from what we've been able to see so far, he's looked solid. And finally, he said, we got 2 true freshman freak shows. You have Harold Perkins, linebacker, and you have Quincy Wiggins, the defensive lineman. Both of them 4 and 5 stars. They're going to be studs for LSU. Now, is it in 2022 or is it beyond when they get their legs more under them? I don't know. But the fact that we're talking about these guys as standouts already in their first fall camp, that tells me that LSU is getting back to being LSU. They're getting back to their old ways because we've talked about it. If you think about what LSU is traditionally, it's freak show linebackers like Harold Perkins, the 5-star, freak show defensive linemen like Quincy Wiggins, 4-star defensive lineman, and they fly around on defense. They come downhill with bad intentions, and they wreak havoc. So to have 2 guys that in the early going, in the first week of fall camp, you're excited about, very, very good sign for Tiger fans and the direction of their football program in the long term. Both those guys, their movement was complimented by Brian Kelly, said that they have a different gear almost is kind of the feel around those guys. A lot of excitement in Baton Rouge right now. We move to Florida. On to Gainesville and Billy Napier, Mr. Scare Money Don't Make No Money, one of the coolest quotes in all of college football. They got their fall camp on and popping, and we talked to Nick De La Torre of Gators Online. He does great work. Follow him on Twitter. Check out that website. And he was actually in the car driving to practice, talking to me, saying, here's the lowdown, here's the things you need to know, here's the early intel right now for Florida on fall camp, which I was very grateful for. The feeling is depth is kind of the key word, right? And it's going to be something that you talk about pretty much anywhere you go talking about fall camp. But he said on the defensive line, you have bookends. You have great depth at the edge rusher position. He said in the middle of that defense, though, you have Gervon Dexter. And then past that, you got to have somebody else step up, right? You got to have somebody else that can help him. So fall camp returns on that aren't looking great, depending on how you want to look at it. But I think there's an open space, more or less, for somebody to step up and take control. Because you look at Florida a year ago, they gave up 164 yards on the ground. A fair amount of that has to do with the interior defensive line. So you got to have somebody else step up. Now, like we were talking about, they look good on the edge. 17th in the country a year ago in terms of sack percentage. Brenton Cox is a bad man. Nick De La Torre says, hey, they're 3 or 4 deep at the edge position here at Florida, which is obviously a very good thing. And you talk about on the offensive side of the ball, when you look at depth, they're going to have 4 of their 5 starters back on the offensive line. You may not see all 4 of those guys start, which is actually a really good thing if you're talking about the offensive line at Florida, because somebody came in and stole that job from a starter a year ago. So they feel good about what they have there. Then you also are 3 to 4 deep at the running back position. Montrell Johnson, a guy from Louisiana they're really excited about. He transferred, looked good in the spring. Naquan Wright, another guy who they expect to carry the load quite a bit. So if it's running back by committee, that's not a bad thing. Ultimately, it's just going to help AR get more comfortable to be able to hand the ball off on 3rd and 1 and feel good about getting it. That just makes your quarterback so much more comfortable. So the depth they have, both at running back and offensive line, is something they're excited about early in fall camp. Now, a name that Nick De La Torre told me to keep an eye on is freshman corner Devin Moore. Was a late addition to this class, a Billy Napier ad, and he told me, hey, he may not win the starting job at corner, but he's going to compete for it. He's rotating a lot with the 1s and 2s. He's someone to be excited about. And when you think about corners that have played at Florida as true freshmen, I mean, some of the guys that have played early are guys like Vernon Hargraves, guys like Joe Hayden, guys like Janoris Jenkins, and it's a pretty small group. So to add a guy like Devin Moore to that elite company of corners that have played early, played as freshmen at Florida, you got to feel really excited about what he's going to bring to the table. So a lot of good takeaways there in terms of fall camp intel within the SEC. We're going to keep doing this. It is one of the many benefits of being able to be in this position and be able to talk college football with all of the phenomenal assets we have across the network. Again, if you haven't yet checked out any of these websites, I recommend you do so at on3.com. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.